Matthews Lane, West Kingston, a place where politics and violence became inseparable, where the People's National Party held ground like it was sacred territory, and where young men learned early that loyalty to the party could mean life or death. In the 1970s and 1980s, when Jamaica's political tribalism was at its most vicious, one name rose from these blood-soaked streets to become a legend in both the garrison communities of Kingston and the crack-infested corners of New York City. Glenford Early Bird Phipps, a man who built an empire on cocaine and political allegiance, who walked with Bob Marley and commanded respect in the darkest corners of the drug trade, whose influence stretched from the bus parks of downtown Kingston to the projects of Brooklyn and the Bronx. His story is one of ambition, brutality, and the deadly cost of power in a world where political colors determine who lived and who died. Born in the 1950s in the heart of West Kingston, Early Bird grew up in an era when Jamaica's two major political parties, the People's National Party and the Jamaica Labour Party, were carving the island into tribal territories. Matthews Lane was PNP territory, pure and simple, and the Phipps family had deep roots there. Early Bird wasn't alone in his family's involvement in the streets. His brother Carl Phipps was killed alongside a cousin in 1977, gunned down in violence that was never solved, no arrests ever made. It was the kind of death that happened so often in West Kingston that it barely made headlines. Another brother, Donald, known as Zeeks, would later follow Early Bird into the criminal underworld, eventually taking over when Early Bird could no longer hold the reins. This was a family where violence wasn't just common, it was expected, almost inherited. Early Bird's path took an interesting turn before he fully committed to the streets. He found work as a chef, and not just any chef. He toured with Bob Marley, cooking for the reggae legend, as Marley's star rose internationally. When Marley fell ill, Early Bird was there, preparing meals, being part of that inner circle. It was a legitimate connection to Jamaican culture, to something bigger than the streets, but it wouldn't last. The pull of Matthews Lane, the opportunities in the drug trade, and the power that came with leading men in a garrison community proved too strong. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, Early Bird had founded or was leading what would become one of Jamaica's most notorious criminal organizations, the Spanglers Posse. The name came from the Spanglers community around Matthews Lane, and the gang drew its membership from PNP supporters who were willing to do anything to protect their political territory and make money in the process. The Spanglers started as political enforcers, the kind of men who made sure PNP candidates won elections in their areas, who intimidated JLP supporters, who turned out votes through fear and favors. But Early Bird saw beyond just local politics. The real money, the kind of money that could change everything, was in drugs. And in the early 1980s, as crack cocaine exploded across America, Early Bird positioned the Spanglers to take full advantage. He headed the New York City operations for the Spanglers, working closely with Toywell Cow Phillips, another key figure in the organization. Together they controlled drug distribution networks that stretched across Brooklyn, the Bronx, and into New Jersey. They started with marijuana, the traditional Jamaican export, but quickly pivoted to cocaine and crack when they saw the profits. By the mid-1980s, Jamaican posses like the Spanglers were estimated to control between 35 and 40% of the crack cocaine market in the United States. It was an astonishing figure. An estimated 10,000 to 20,000 members and associates spread across 40 different gangs, operating in 15 major U.S. metropolitan areas. The Spanglers were at the center of this, with strongholds in New York, Miami, Philadelphia, and deeper into New Jersey cities like Englewood, Paterson, Trenton, and Camden. Cow Phillips specifically controlled the Englewood and Paterson networks. moving marijuana, cocaine, and crack through these areas, while Early Bird coordinated from New York. Intelligence reports from 1988 identified 27 Spangler Posse members operating drug distribution networks in New Jersey alone. By 1990, that number had grown to 45. The expansion was rapid, calculated, and incredibly profitable. Money flowed back to Jamaica, funding operations in Matthews Lane, supporting families, buying weapons, and solidifying the Spanglers' control over their territory. The violence that came with this empire was extreme, even by the standards of the crack epidemic. Jamaican posses were known for their brutality, their willingness to use high-powered weapons, to eliminate rivals without hesitation, to enforce discipline within their own ranks through fear. The Spanglers were no different. They engaged in drive-by shootings, murders, extortion, gun trafficking, and money laundering. They worked with Colombian cartels for their cocaine supply, building relationships that kept the product flowing north. And they were constantly at war, not just with rival drug dealers, but with their political and cultural enemies, the Shower Posse. The Shower Posse was everything the Spanglers were, but aligned with the Jamaica Labour Party. Based in Tivoli Gardens, another garrison community in West Kingston, the Shower Posse was led by figures like Lester Jim Brown Coke, and the rivalry between the two groups was vicious and unending. It was PNP versus JLP, Matthews Lane versus Tivoli Gardens, Spanglers versus Shower, and the body count on both sides kept climbing. In Jamaica, the two gangs turned entire neighborhoods into war zones, with frequent shootings and no-go areas where even police feared to tread. But the violence didn't stay in Kingston. It followed the gangs to America, to Canada, to the UK, anywhere the Jamaican diaspora had settled and the drug trade had taken root. On August 4th, 1985, this transnational violence exploded in an unexpected place, a quiet suburb in New Jersey, the FRG Sports Complex, also known as Pleasureland Swim Club in Oakland, New Jersey, about 25 miles northwest of Manhattan, was hosting a picnic to celebrate Jamaican Independence Day. Approximately 2,000 people had gathered at the private recreational facility, many bussed in from Brooklyn and the Bronx. Families were there, children playing in the pools, people eating and enjoying the summer afternoon. It should have been a peaceful celebration of Jamaican culture and community. Instead, it became a massacre. Around 4:30 p.m., gunfire erupted suddenly. Someone opened fire from a concession pavilion or picnic area, reportedly with a MAC-10 submachine gun, and chaos exploded across the grounds. This wasn't random violence. Elements of the Shower Posse had clashed with members of the Spanglers Posse, and reports also mentioned involvement from the Boston-based Dog Posse and the Tel Aviv Posse, another Jamaican group. It was a multi-faction melee, possibly over drug territory in New Jersey and Philadelphia, or just a continuation of long-standing rivalries that had been imported from Jamaica and festering in New York. The deep political divide, PNP versus JLP, Spanglers versus Shower, had turned a community picnic into a battlefield. 2 people were killed in the shooting. At least 9 to 10 others were shot and wounded, with 3 critically injured. Some reports put the total number of injured at 19 or 20 when including those hurt in the panic that followed. Terrified attendees, including families with children, dove for cover and then stampeded toward the exit. In their desperation to escape, they battered down an 8-foot chain-link fence, some getting injured in the crush. Police from Oakland, nearby towns, and Bergen County responded in force. They searched hundreds of people, cars, and buses, ultimately seizing 33 firearms connected to the incident or related arrests. 7 men, mostly Jamaican nationals, some described as illegal aliens, were arrested shortly after. They faced charges, including attempted murder, aggravated assault, and unlawful possession of handguns and machine guns. Bail was set high, between $100,000 and $150,000 each. Named suspects in reports included Michael Elliott, who allegedly fired at a police officer, along with Junior McLeod, Franklin Gordon, Earl Nelson, and Anthony Kellner. One wounded attendee told the media that the feud had been going on for years and years, a rivalry with roots so deep that even an ocean couldn't stop it. The incident became known locally as the Pleasureland Massacre, and it marked a turning point. The once popular resort area eventually fell into disrepair and was abandoned, a victim of the violence that had erupted on its grounds. For law enforcement, it was a wake-up call. Jamaican posses were expanding their drug operations into New Jersey and beyond, and they were bringing their extreme violence and political rivalries with them. The mid to late 1980s represented the height of Early Bird's power. He was moving product, expanding territory, and the money was flowing. The Spanglers supplied marijuana from New York City to associates in Trenton and Camden, keeping those networks fed while crack operations exploded in the bigger cities. But success in the drug trade always comes with heat, and by the late 1980s, U.S. law enforcement was closing in. The federal government had launched major investigations into Jamaican posses, using RICO statutes to target their leadership and operations. Raids were happening, indictments were coming down, and deportations were increasing. Toywell Carl Phipps, Early Bird's close partner in the New York operations, found himself under investigation by New York authorities. In early 1989, Carl fled back to Jamaica to avoid arrest. Law enforcement officials believed that his replacement for the Spanglers would come from the New Jersey area, someone already embedded in those Inglewood, Patterson, Trenton, or Camden networks. Early Bird himself must have felt the pressure mounting. Whether he was directly targeted or simply saw the writing on the wall, he too returned to Jamaica in 1989. Back in Kingston, he tried to build a legitimate life, or at least the appearance of one. He gained employment as a supervisor with Metropolitan Parks and Markets, a government agency responsible for managing Kingston's public markets and parks. It was respectable work, a position with authority and a steady paycheck. He was the father of over 15 children, and perhaps he thought he could finally step away from the violence, use his connections to provide for his family without constantly looking over his shoulder. But in West Kingston, in the world of garrison politics and gang rivalries, there was no retirement, no walking away. The Shower Posse hadn't forgotten the years of war between the Spanglers and the Shower, the political tribalism, the murders on both sides. None of it had been forgiven or forgotten. Early Bird and Carl Phipps were back in Jamaica, and they were targets. On July 15, 1990, Early Bird was at a bus park in Kingston, working in his capacity as a supervisor for Metropolitan Parks and Markets. Toywell Carl Phipps was with him. The attack was brutal and swift. Gunmen, believed to be from the Shower Posse and reportedly acting on orders connected to Lester Jim Brown Coke's organization, opened fire on both men. Early Bird and Carl were killed in the assault, gunned down in broad daylight at a busy public location. The message was clear. No matter how far you ran, no matter what job you took, if you were part of the Spanglers, if you had been an enemy of the Shower Posse, your past would catch up with you. No arrests were ever made in connection with their murders. In Jamaica, particularly in cases involving gang violence and political killings, justice was rare. The police might know who was responsible, but proving it in court, getting witnesses to testify, that was nearly impossible when fear ruled the streets. Early Bird's death left a vacuum in Matthews Lane, one that his younger brother Zeeks quickly filled. Donald Zeeks Phipps took over leadership of the Spanglers' operations in the community, continuing the family's legacy of violence and control. Zeeks would carry on for years, maintaining the Spanglers' presence in Matthews Lane until he was eventually convicted of double murder in 2006, finally ending the Phipps family's direct grip on the gang. The cycle of violence that claimed Early Bird, that had claimed his brother Carl in 1977, was a pattern that repeated itself over and over in West Kingston. Older residents in the area sometimes spoke nostalgically about the old order, about dons like Early Bird, who provided a certain kind of structure, who protected the community from petty crimes and outside threats. But that protection came at an enormous cost. The extortion, the murders, the constant warfare with rival gangs, the political tribalism that turned elections into bloodbaths. All of it contributed to Jamaica's staggering crime rates and created generations of young men who knew nothing but violence. Early Bird's story was part of that larger tragedy. A man who rose from the streets of Matthews Lane to command an international drug empire, who walked with legends like Bob Marley and ruthless killers like Phipps, who helped build a criminal organization that controlled nearly 40% of America's crack market at its peak, only to be cut down in the same streets where he started, killed by the same rivalries that had defined his entire life.